comparison now is the connective tissue covering, collagen connective tissue covering around the brain, right there, and that was called the dura mater. Right there is the connective tissue covering around the heart, right there. Same collagen connective tissue covering. And what is that called? That is called the parietal pericardium, right? So we see the same thing, same collagen. So wrapping around the brain, dura mater, wrapping around the heart, parietal pericardium. Okay, so that's out of the way right there. Now, in your groups, folks, you're going to take a whole heart with you, and one that I had cut in a mid or coronal view. So I did this cutting right here, okay? Now what you're going to do is you're going to play with this and feel, and there, folks, again, so just come around, you guys, let me get back. So there, this is called the apex of the heart, and this is the base. All right, now if you think about a triangle, then what do we see with triangles? Triangles like that. This base, apex. So notice what happens here. We could be using the same analogy, same language. Then the heart is an upside down triangle arrangement, right? Because there now there's the triangle analogy, but that's flipped around, okay? So base, apex, that's just for your information. I'm never going to test you on that. There's just way too much other information to test on, okay? Then what you're going to do, folks, is you're going to look for this running across like that. So when you're looking at it like that, it's going to run from your right shoulder down to your left torso right there like that. And that artery right there is the anterior interventricular artery, which means that this is a ventricle muscle, that's a ventricle muscle. This is an atrium muscle, that's an atrium muscle right there. And you can see how much less muscle there is in the atrium than there is in the ventricles, or in the atria versus the ventricles, right? So once we have that, this is the left ventricle, and this is the right ventricle muscle. So now you've got that point of reference, and now you can see that this is the muscle of the right atrium, and that is the muscle of the left atrium. Notice the muscle, we can't see the chambers yet, right? Anterior interventricular artery. And then what you can do is, or what I'd like for you to do is just squeeze this, palpate, and squeeze that. And what you're going to feel here is that this feels thinner than this. This does not feel as strong or as muscular as this. And why not? Because here's less muscle than there is there. Alright? Now we have that, folks, and here we see the right ventricle right there, okay? And what you can do is you can take the probe or the forceps or your finger, and you can slide it in like that, real gently. You're going to have to go through the pulmonary semilunar valve right there. So this artery right here is the pulmonary artery right there. So there's my right ventricle pulmonary artery right there, which means the artery behind it is the aorta. Okay, so right ventricle pulmonary artery, behind it aorta. Okay, now this is the right side, which means this is your right atrium right there. And into the right atrium, remember we said 3 veins. So there you can actually see some of these veins, and again, beggars can't be choosers. So when I ask you that are hunting and stuff, listen, bring me the yard, but cut the blood vessels a little high so we can have that. Some of your colleagues have done a great job there, or those folks that hunted, because there is the superior vena cava. And what I want you to do is feel the difference between a vein and an artery. They feel different. The vein is actually much thinner than the artery if you look at them next to one another. Alright? So that is the superior vena cava right there. That's running into the right atrium right there. Okay? This one also has on the posterior side the inferior vena cava right there. So the inferior vena cava is going to run into the right atrium right there. So there you can see. So there's the superior vena cava, there's the inferior vena cava. Then, before you do anything else, what I want you to do is peel back. And notice there's some fat around these diodes. Not a lot of adipose. Because deer out there in nature, tough lives. Right? A lot of them are comfortable, but not as comfy as domesticated animals. The sheep hearts, deer hearts, human hearts, tons of adipose. Right? So on the back of the heart, you'll see the coronary sinus right there. So there's the coronary sinus right there that we talked about, and that's going to drain into the right atrium as well. Right there. Okay? So anterior side, anterior interventricular septum, left ventricle, right ventricle. Now we flip this around, folks, and there is the posterior interventricular septum. So there's the right side, and there's the left side. So you can actually manipulate this. So notice there, posterior interventricular, anterior interventricular, right ventricle right there, and left ventricle right there. So you can grab onto this, three-dimensional, so grab onto these so you can see where they are. Alright, so that is the outside of the heart. Now what we do is, we can't see the chambers, we can't see the valves, etc. So now what do we do? Or what did I do? And again, I did this because I gave it to people. I said, okay, there's a knife. I brought in a sharp knife, etc. But it needs to be cut really perfect or very, very nicely. So again, cut right there, right in the coronal view, so that we can have an anterior and a posterior section. All right. So there we have a whole stack of half hearts that have been cut like that. So again, notice point of reference. Anterior interventricular apex, left ventricle, right ventricle. So I can see all of the structures again before I start looking at it, right? So right ventricle, pulmonary artery, aorta, right atrium, left atrium. There I can see the superior vena cava. So you practice with this, all right? So now we open this up, and what you're going to want to do here, folks, is, Louisa, just give me an empty tray there again, another big empty tray right there. Yes, thanks. Thank you, man. So now what you're going to do, folks, is just keep it next to you like that. Thank you, Brandy. So here, you just keep it right next to you like that. And what I recommend, folks, is you have 2 forceps or 2 probes, etc. And why is that? Because these are the same organ. But notice what has happened. What did we do with this? We folded it like a page of a book. So they're the 2 pages of a book. But notice, same organ, 3-dimensional. So when I come around to you and help you, I just put it right there next to one another like that. And now we look at everything. My advice to you is, before you do anything else, once you've opened it up, you need to now determine what is the left side and what is the right side. And how do we do that?
Different colors.
We look at the thickness of the muscle. So there's my ventricle. So we're looking at the thickness of that muscle relative to the thickness of that muscle. Right? So what do we see, folks? This is thicker than that. This is thicker than that. So what does that mean? This means that this is the left myocardium and this is the right myocardium, which means that this is the left ventricle. That means that is the left atrium. That means that this is the right ventricle and that is the right atrium. There's the interventricular septum right there. So the first thing you do before you do anything else is establish left versus right side. Left side, right side. And now I can't go wrong. So now I know what is left side, etc. And now what happens is me, and again my advice is you figure out what is comfortable for you. But if you want to find things only one time, then my advice is find the right atrium. So there is the right atrium there, and there's the right atrium there. So I'm ignoring everything else. I'll find the right atrium after I've determined left and right side. Okay, so let me take these pins out now. So now there's the right atrium. So now I'm going to feel in there, folks, because what I'm looking for now are the blood vessels of the right atrium. So there's nothing there on that side. So I come over here, and there I see there's the superior vena cava, etc. All right. So now what happens? Okay, now the other thing too, lots of skewers are available to you. The skewers are right here, and when you're done working with the skewers today, I will have that water, that container right there, that beaker filled with dishwashing water. We just put it in there to clean it up. All right. So skewers, use skewers. So there is my right atrium right there, and there running into the right atrium is the superior vena cava right there. I can stick my finger in there. I can use the probe, skewers. So now you're practicing. You've got your notes. Right atrium has 3 blood vessels, superior vena cava, and like I said, these DRs are pretty good. So the second one that we're going to look for, oh yeah, now what you do, folks, is you open this up like that. So there's the superior vena cava right there. Okay, everybody good? It's just so you can see, superior vena cava. Now what you do is you open this up like that. And you look back into it, you're going to see 2 holes. Like there. Right? Now you take your skewer, folks, and in the upper hole, the skewer slides into the inferior vena cava. So inferior vena cava is going to be in the upper hole at the back. Right there. Yeah? So superior vena cava. Remember now, right atrium, how many blood vessels? 3. 1, 2, 3. So the one on the bottom is going to be the coronary sinus. Now remember what we said? We said the coronary sinus is located on the back of the heart. So there, so I'm just going to pull that and the bottom, and there you can see right there, folks, how the skewer is running along the coronary sinus right there. So there's the coronary sinus, the skewer you can see right there. Right there. Right? So right there. Coronary sinus right there. Alright, so when we open this up, that's what we see. So we see on the back, that's what we see. Skew on the bottom is coming out of the coronary sinus, and the skew on top is coming out of the inferior vena cava. Right? And then there is the superior vena cava. 1, 2, 3 veins into the right atrium. Alright? So now, ladies and gentlemen, we have that. And then there we see the tricuspid valve right there. There's the tricuspid valve. I don't see it. So you keep going back and forth. Notice back and forth. So there's a piece of the tricuspid valve there. And there's most of the tricuspid valve right there. Then, tricuspid valve has chordae tendineae or tendinous cords running down from it right there. and some of it right there. Alright, so there you can see, so you're looking, remember three-dimensional organs, you've got to go both sides, right? Right there. Okay? Then, folks, the chordae tendineae muscles are going to run onto these bumpy muscles right there and there. And what we call the bumpy muscles that the chordae tendineae are attached to, papillary muscle. So notice here now you're starting to review. So chordae tendineae onto papillary muscles right there. So now we are in the right ventricle right there and right there. All right? Now the right ventricle, the artery that leaves the right ventricle is the pulmonary artery. So there's nothing there. You can see it's dead ends right there. And you stick your finger in there and you feel nothing there. So there's nothing there, which means that the pulmonary artery has to be there. Now, when you pull open the right ventricle of the deer heart, folks, there you're going to see a nice trabeculum carnum right there. So that muscle that runs left to right in the right ventricle is the trabeculum carnum. All right, so let's review. That is a papillary muscle right there. A papillary muscle, we know it's papillary muscle because what runs into the papillary muscle? Chordae tendineae. And on the right hand side of the deer heart is a trabeculum carnum muscle right there. Really nice, very prominent. Okay? Now, this is the right ventricle right there. Now, please flip it over. So you flip it over on that side. And what do we see right there? There's the right ventricle, folks. What is this? What is this?
Pulmonary
That is the
artery.
pulmonary artery. So now you take your skewer or your forceps and you put it in there, and there is where it comes out right there. Right there. Remember three-dimensional organ right there. So you can stick your finger in if you want to, like that. You can slide your finger in there, comes out right there. That's blood, that's a blood clot. There's right there. All right? Or that, and then also, folks, you cut it. So I've cut it open like that so you can look into it, so you can see the pulmonary semilunar valves in there. So there are the pulmonary semilunar valves in there. So you think about how the difficulty we have with these drawings to try to emulate two-dimensional of these three-dimensional organs. So you're looking in there to see the pulmonary semilunar valve right there. Right? So that is now the right ventricle. So blood flows to the lungs and that comes back to the heart, and now we're on the left-hand side. So there now, so we put things here, and now what are we seeing? There's the left-hand side. Thicker, thinner. So there's my left ventricle, and there's my left atrium right there. So again, I prod and I poke. There's no hole here. But I come over here, and there, it slides right through. So there is where the pulmonary vein would be right there. The pulmonary veins from the lungs into the left atrium right there. There we see the bumpy muscles in the atria, folks, and the bumpy muscles in the atria, those are called the pectinate muscles. So you can see the pectinate, we've seen the papillary, we've seen the trabeculum carnum, right? So there's now my left atrium, both sides. There is my bicuspid valve, both sides. There's my chordae tendineae, both sides. There's my papillary muscles, both sides. And remember now, papillary muscle, chordae tendineae runs into them, right? There we see bumpy muscles right there, folks, where there are no chordae tendineae. So what are those bumpy muscles also called? Trabeculum carnum. We just saw a very, very big, prominent trabeculum carnum right there. So the working definition, right? So there's my left ventricle, big. Notice how big it is. Look at the muscle of the myocardium. So left ventricle into the aorta. So there's my aorta, aortic semilunar valve, aortic semilunar valve. Right? That's half of the aorta right there. There's the other half of the aorta right there. Now, folks, let's come around here so you can see what you need to draw in. So now I'm looking right. So notice, where am I looking? I'm looking right. As soon as you pass the aortic semilunar valve, you are going to look for the opening of the coronary artery. So that diagram that we have there on that figure 26 point whatever I had asked you to draw to find is the coronary artery opening right there. So there is the aortic semilunar valve. So there is the opening of that coronary artery right there. And when you flip it over to this side, you see the opening of it right there. So there are two openings. There are two openings. There's the coronary artery right there. And there is the coronary artery right there. So please look, folks. So one, I want you to look at find the coronary artery. And number two, the size of the lumen of the coronary artery compared to the lumen of the aorta, which is right there. Can we do a comparison between the two lumens? Yellow pin is the coronary artery. That is the size of the coronary artery lumen, and this is the aorta right here. That's the aorta lumen. No comparison. No comparison. So when that gets clogged up, I can't get blood to my oxygenated blood to the heart, and I die. Because these muscles starve of oxygen, or these cells. Alright? Alright, questions on the heart proper, folks. On the heart proper. So your chambers, your valves, your blood vessels, other structures. Okay, I think I've covered all of the structures.